As part of our disclosure statements, since this is an educational course, I am a stock shareholder in a private company. We have gotten research grant support from the National Institute on Aging, from the Alzheimer's Association, University of California, San Diego, University of California, Los Angeles, and from this private agency. And I do have a off-label use of a nutritional product called Benagine, so just be aware that I am somewhat conflicted in what I say. So I'm going to talk about oxaloacetic acid supplementation and how we modify the NAD to NADH ratio in order to try to get some of the same effects as calorie restriction. And what I'm going to discuss, I'm sure being in an anti-aging crowd, you're aware of calorie restriction. But what I'm going to do is just briefly go over calorie restriction, and then I'm going to go over this association that we've seen where NAD to the NADH ratio has been seen many times in calorie restriction and may play a part in one of the molecular pathways that lead to lifespan extension. And then, in order to test this idea or this association, we're actually going to show where we've changed the NAD to NADH ratio and how it's changed, and look at some of the results to see if they actually do mimic calorie restriction. So, a couple of different parts here. So first, let's talk about calorie restriction. It's the total limitation of calories, and there have been a variety of studies to look at, well, should we just decrease protein levels, or should we just decrease carbohydrates or fat? And it pretty much turns out that the reduction of calories is what seems to be driving this, whether they do it through reducing carbohydrates or reducing fat. It seems to be the reduction of calories alone. Now, when you're dropping calorie levels, you may also be dropping your micronutrient levels because you're just eating less. And so we look at something called CRON, which is calorie restriction with optimal nutrition. So when we reduce the calorie load down to our animals, we proportionately increase up the micronutrients. So does that have an effect? Yeah, maybe. Okay. One of the things we have found, you know, when you're dropping your diet from 25% or 60% below what you want to eat, we found that's very difficult to follow. Since I studied calorie restriction, I tried it for a month, and I know you'll find this surprising. My wife suggested that I was irritable. Now, I can't imagine doing that kind of diet for the rest of my life, which is what it takes in order to see the benefits. So when we're looking at a diet that is 25 to 60% less than you would normally want to eat, it's going to be very difficult for the control population to put that into effect. You have to be really motivated to do that. And there are some people who are actually doing this. They're individuals who are in the Calorie Restriction Society. Is there anyone from the Calorie Restriction Society here today? No. There aren't a lot of them, let me tell you, because it's so tough to do. I mean, they'll live for a long time, but they just won't live here. So it's interesting. We found out that this calorie restriction thing happened in the 1930s at Cornell University, and it was part of an idea that, well, if we feed the animals less, they'll have less life in them, and they'll die early. Well, imagine when they did that and the animals lived longer. So it's been kind of an enigma for many years, and we haven't understood it, but we believe now that it has something to do with gene expression and how the genes are expressed in order to protect DNA and cellular repair and whatnot. And we say that because the only way we're also able to increase lifespan is by tinkering with the genes. So that's kind of empirical knowledge. Now, it's interesting that this process works so well in so many animals. I mean, they've tested yeast in worms and flies and guppies and spiders and mice and rats and dogs and primates. Sorry, got carried away. For one treatment to have that universal effect shows one of two things. One, it's an amazing thing. Or two, there's similar metabolic pathways. And we believe it's more the similar metabolic pathways. So after a review, the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences concluded that calorie restriction increases lifespan, it increases health span, because what good is lifespan without health span, and shows profound and sustained benefits. So that's not me talking, that's a bunch of other guys. So what are these sustained benefits? They include increases in average and maximal lifespan. So we're not just pushing the center of the curve to the right, we're pushing the entire curve to the right. We're seeing decreases in cancer incidence, up to 55% decrease. And they measure that by taking human breast cancer tissues, implanting them into mice, and then having one group that's a control group and one group that's a calorie-restricted group, and seeing how long it takes to die. So a 55% decrease is pretty amazing when you consider it. Decreases in neurodegenerative diseases in animal models such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So here we take animals that seem to have similar responses. We may actually even take the genes that are responsible for the beta amyloid proteins and transplant them into animals and see what their effects are. We've done some of that in our lab. Complete protection against type 2 diabetes. Well, hey, we can cure diabetes. Just eat less. This is done in primate studies. They could not find diabetes in the primates when they calorie restricted them. So that's an important finding considering what our population is trending. We've also seen reduction in cardiovascular risk. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this because I always mess it up. But even in human subjects that have been practicing calorie restriction, they look at things like blood pressure, and Fontana has done a lot of this work, where they'll have people from the calorie restricted society come in and they'll compare them to controls, and they'll see that these people in their 40s and 50s and 60s have the blood pressure of someone who's about 17. We're also looking at reduction in inflammatory diseases such as autoimmune diseases. Now, you know, I've talked about all the benefits, and they are substantial. I mean, anytime you can increase lifespan, that's pretty amazing. But there are some disadvantages, too. For instance, the animals are lighter in weight than fully fed animals. And that's important if you're fighting for territory. If you're the calorie-restricted one, you're going to lose. Puberty occurs later in animals. I know if I delayed my daughter's puberty, she'd probably kill me. Humans under calorie restriction report being hungry for the first 30 days of the process. Well, I guess if you eat 30% less, you're going to be hungry. And most humans can't lose 5 pounds, let alone cut calories by 30% over a lifespan. And then, of course, the biggest disadvantage is there is no benefit to the drug companies. Dun, dun, dun.